All right, this is the second video for system programming to get set up for FreeBSD running on VirtualBox. In this edition or this video, we're going to get TWM installed, which is part of Xorg, and we're going to install Lumina. I was inspired to do this by a video I saw with Roller Angel on FreeBSD Fridays last week, where he installed Lumina. Normally I'd install XFC or something like that. But this was really simple, and here we go. The prereq is that you have the base system installed, which I did in the prior video. And our objective here is to get Xorg running with TWM and Lumina. We're going to snapshot the base system right off the get-go, so in case something goes wrong, we can restore to it. This is the third time I put the video together, so I've got great experience going back to base. But the next thing we'll do is we'll change the graphics controller from VMS VGA to VBox S VGA. That saves us some trouble with the VirtualBox video driver. Even though it'll complain that that's not a valid setting, it is, and it'll work fine. We're going to check for updates on the systems and packages. The original system was installed at P7, and today P8 came out, so we'll get to see what that looks like. We'll reduce the boot delay so that it'll boot faster. We'll install some packages, or we'll install these packages, and we'll configure and test them, and then we'll snapshot again. I'm going to do it in real time, so the pull down of the video, the Xorg and some of these applications is going to take a little bit. So I will cover some of the documentation and where to go for help during this long-running install sections. They won't take that long, but they'll take a little longer than be comfortable just sitting around watching it do its thing. So without further ado, we're going to kick it off. Start VirtualBox. In VirtualBox, you should see your base system. We're going to go to Snapshots. There's two ways to do that. One is to select the machine, go to Machine, click Tools, click Snapshots. And the other way is through this hamburger menu, just click Snapshots. Right now I only have current state. I haven't taken any snapshots. So I'm going to take one. I click Take, call it Baseline, call it whatever you want, but remember what it's for. Maybe pre-Xorg. Yeah, pre-Xorg. All right, there we go. It takes the snapshot and puts us back in current state. We're in current state. We'll make changes to the running system, and if something goes wrong, we can go back to the pre-Xorg snapshot. Coming back to details, we're going to change the display driver, the graphics controller. This is the default, and in order to use it, you have to install a special XF86 driver, and even if you do that, it doesn't handle resizing real well. So in my experience, I think that this VBox SVGA thing, graphics controller, works better. It'll tell you that there are invalid settings, but if you read them, it says, this is configured to use a controller other than the recommended one. Please consider switching, which is not invalid, it just is annoying. So we're just going to say OK, and that'll change our system up. We're ready to start. Click Start. We'll use the console a lot in this video because the X Windows system is going to run on here. I'm not waiting for it to auto boot. I'll just hit enter. But normally start headless if you're just doing non-graphical user interface work. And then you can use terminal, but we'll do both. So I'm going to start a terminal window as well. It has the capability of running on port 3333 is what we set up, localhost. It has the ability to do that as soon as this login prompt shows up, or maybe even a little before, as soon as this SSHD daemon starts. But if you forgot what port it was, you just go over here to this little widget that looks like two monitors, click it, click Network Settings, click go into adapter 1, it's set up for NAT, that's fine, go to Advanced, all this is fine. We're going to look at this port forwarding, go to port forwarding, we see that the host port is 3333. The guest port, which you can't see, is 2220, is 22. Cancel out of that, and come back to this, excuse me, press enter. And now we're logged in. It may prompt you for a password if you didn't install the certificate. All right, we're going by the notes. We did this, we did that. We're going to do some updates. So in order to do that, we're going to become root. A couple of different ways to do that, but the easiest is sudo-s for start a shell as sudo, as root. And then we're going to do the update, FreeBSD update. Well, before we do that, we'll look at the system uname-a. We see that we're on P7, patch level 7. So now FreeBSD update, fetch the update, and then install it. It's going to go out and it's going to pull the patch list back. And then it's going to inspect our system, see what needs to be changed. When it's done inspecting, it'll give us a list of items that it proposes be changed. We can either abort the process by interrupting it, or we can continue through it and it'll apply the patches. So 36 patches since we installed yesterday. Normally this doesn't happen that often, but good thing it did because it fixes some stuff, particularly some security vulnerabilities. I forget which one. I think SQLite was one of them. We'll see that when we get into the documentation discussion. So there, it's going to list all the things that have changed. There's SQLite, so sure enough, that's part of its fix. You can scroll through this whole list and see everything that's changed. It's not that long. When you're done, you can hit Q. If you want to interrupt it, hit Control-C or something. I'm not entirely sure. I generally don't interrupt it, but you could. Hit Q, it installs the updates, it's done. A good idea would be to reboot right now, but even though it doesn't ask us to, because we really do want to pick those changes. I think those changes are picked up already, but if we ask the kernel what version it is, and the user land. Oh, it did the update. All right, so we don't need to reboot for that reason. I learned something. I'm not super expert at this, I just know what I'm doing. We'll do package update and package upgrade as well. There probably isn't anything to do there, but you never know. Upgrade -y. And the ampersands between when you do package update, ampersand, ampersand, that just means if the first command completes successfully, run the second one. It ran them both, nothing to do there. Now we're going to reduce the boot times. And the way to do the boot times is to change a configuration default in loader.conf. So in bootloader.conf, there's nothing configured yet. We can find out what's possible to configure there, or at least mostly what's possible, I guess, through the defaults for loader.conf, right, which lists a whole slew of kernel options. The one we're looking for is this one, but we're not gonna have to scroll through all this to see it. We'll just grep for auto boot in the file /boot/loader.conf. Sorry about the beeps. So grep auto boot, yeah, there it is. Grep auto boot. Sorry, there isn't anything in bootloader.conf. It's in defaults, loader.conf. There it is, okay, which just shows us the one line. We'll grab some of this in the clipboard, and then we'll add it to bootloader.conf. There's two ways of doing this. One way is to pull VI up, just VI bootloader.conf as root, paste it in, fix it up however you want. But if you do that and you make a mistake, it'll kind of mess up the bootloader. So smarter is to use the tool for it, sysrc, but we have to tell it which file we want to modify. And then our setting that we're going to change, I'm going to change the auto boot delay to 1 second. It'll change it from nothing to 1 second. If we look at the bootloader.conf file, we can see that it's there. We could reboot, and it would take a second for it to boot, get through the menu instead of 10. But we're going to move on. The one we're going to install is, the first one we're going to install is Xorg. And we're going to get Firefox at the same time. Sorry about the motorcycle in the background. Package install Xorg Firefox will install the Xorg system, the X Windows system, and Firefox, which is a useful capable app. And we'll kick that off. I'll get that running. It's going to download 400 megs worth of files. We'll get it kicked off. It's going to start. While it's doing that, I'll talk about some of the resources available to you. I'm going to move this over slightly so I can kind of tell when it's ending. But in the meantime, over here, FreeBSD.org is the go-to site for all things FreeBSD. When I first started looking at this page, it was kind of, I thought it never changed at all, ever, but it actually did, and I just didn't understand what was going on. This part here, the top part, isn't going to look radically different unless there's a release, so it doesn't change much. But this stuff down here at the bottom changes pretty regularly, although it kind of looks the same all the time. I'll talk about it. So this link here is new. Get the FreeBSD journal, or if it's not new, the journal being free is new. There's a journal that comes out every 2 months or every quarter, and it has articles about how to do things in FreeBSD and is really well written. Used to cost a fortune. No, it used to cost more than I could afford, but now it's free. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Anyway, back here, this is the main link. If you click on this whole section here, it'll bring you back to this page in most things. If you want to donate, click here. That's a good idea. Sure, it's free. It's free software, and their donations are appreciated. You can search for stuff in the FreeBSD site through here. I don't use that very often, but it's there. This tells you a little bit about FreeBSD, the website. You can learn more about the FreeBSD. You can download it from here. There's release information that's supplied here, shortcuts to some stuff, different language translations for the pages, German, English, Japanese, Chinese, Taiwanese. If you speak Spanish, maybe you could add Spanish. That seems like a likely candidate for a good language. But anyhow, these are just shortcuts to things that are available through this other navigation pane here. So if you want to get back to home, click home. About tells you about FreeBSD, gives you an introduction, talks about the features, talks about how advocacy works and that kind of thing, marketing and their privacy policy. Get FreeBSD is where you can go to get it. You can also read more about the releases by clicking on release information. You can read the documentation. We'll come back to this. This is super important. There's community information is here. I'll come back to that as well. Developer information, this is sort of for FreeBSD developers. As a systems developer developing on FreeBSD, you might have some interest here, but this is really for about the development of FreeBSD, not apps on FreeBSD. But, however, the source code is available through here as well. So I guess that's a resource for regular development types. But there's a move afoot to move from Subversion to Git, which is a good thing in my view. Subversion works great, but Git has some features I really like. Support information here. You have information for vendors, security information related to what's going, security advisors, that sort of thing. Bug reports, any kind of, if you run into something really squirrely and can't figure it out, maybe there's a bug, go there. You can submit your own reports, that kind of thing. The foundation is the kind of the advocacy arm of the organization, I guess, and probably they manage finances and stuff like that. I don't know too much about it, but basically it's a nonprofit, and well, we'll click it and see. Basically, it shows kind of what the donations are, allows you to make donations. You can read about them, what kind of the events that they put on are spectacular. FreeBSD Fridays is one, and we'll talk more about that stuff later. But who they are, here's the team. Deb Goodkin is the executive directory and director, and then these other folks are all active members of that organization, and they do good work. So thank them by going there and send money. In the meantime, all right, where are we? Let's see. Okay, let's check on progress. So we've got 50 or so of the 250, so a fifth of them are downloaded. It's going to take, or I'm sorry, they're already downloaded, and it's a fifth of the way through the install. So going pretty quick today, so I'll move right along. In let's look at community first. So there are a zillion mailing lists. You can go here and find out more about them. There are forums, user groups, and so on and so forth. Forums is a really important area. I opened it in another tab. We'll look at that in just a sec. And two documents I want to draw your attention to right away. The FAQ is where you go for frequently asked questions about the install or FreeBSD or anything like that. It's good when you're starting out, not so good later, but if it's a frequently asked question that you're asking, the answer might be here. The handbook is the be-all and end-all. No, it's the go-to resource. It talks all about FreeBSD, from installing it to configuring it to administering it to how jails work, how ZFS works, virtualization on the system, networking, advanced networking, pretty much anything related to FreeBSD, there is a page. This is a well-maintained document. It was recently updated at 11 a.m., which was 2 hours ago by my time, at least, by BCR. So it's well-maintained, good stuff. The forums are a good place to go to ask questions. You're going to be interested. This is what it looks like with mine. It would be red probably the first time you see it. Go to general for general questions, or installing and upgrading is probably your first couple of questions would probably go in there. But there's tons and tons of forums and areas. Okay, I can keep going there. Good. So we can take a look at one, go into installing and upgrading. If we look, there's penned questions at the top, but past the penned questions, which generally tell you what belongs here and what doesn't. Excuse me. But you have a question here about dual boot FreeBSD. You can get an overview of it here. If it's interesting to you, you can click into it. How do I dual boot? If you look into it, it says, hey, and scroll up, you can see the original post, and then you can see all the interactions that folks have had trying to help out. The community is super nice. Didn't used to be that way. When I first came to the forums, they were a little bit foreboding, if that's a word, and it wasn't particularly pleasant. But nowadays, everybody's nice, and it's really helpful. You can tell if a question has been solved by this little green solved icon. That's an option when you work it. If you ask a question and it gets answered, probably a good idea to set it solved. That way people can know whether they need to help or whether they can get help there. All right, progress check, done. Okay, Xorg is installed, Firefox is installed. You can read about other stuff that you might want to be aware of that kind of came out of it. You know, the Python 3.7 was installed, by the way, these dependencies, so on. You can read it all about it. But for me, this is all running. It's all good. So I'm going to go back to VirtualBox, to the display console, which is like a video monitor, because I'm going to run X. So I'm going to start it up. I'll log in as normal. And then to start X, you just start X, one word, at the prompt. And when you do that, what you're going to see is you're going to see a window, and you're going to be locked into this. Remember, your host key is the command key or the control key, which will let you go between the two systems. And then you will you'll be able to switch between windows and stuff like that. So this is TWM running. It's running 3 X terms. You can only see 2 of them at the moment, and a clock. All right, to get between the X terms, you move your mouse. If your mouse isn't moving, and I'll pretend like it isn't, hit command key or whatever to get out of that mode. Go back to this terminal window you got running here. You're logged in as root on the machine, and let's just kill X. So we'll start by typing PS, which is a process list, and we find that Xorg is running on process ID 6727. Let's just kill it. This is kind of not the nicest way, but it sends a signal and it shuts itself down. So we kill it, it disappears, and it stopped running. This is if your mouse ain't working, right? If your mouse isn't working, it's probably because you didn't add it to rc.conf during the install, and you should have said, yeah, enable the mouse daemon. And if you did, it's going to look like this, mouse d enable equals yes. If you didn't, you're going to have to enable it. So we'll use sysrc. It defaults to /crc conf. So we're going to type mouse D, enable, equals, quote, yes. And we'll hit enter. And it will change it from whatever it was. In this case, it was already yes, but it'll change it from no or non-existent to yes. And now it's enabled, but it's not started. To start it, we'll type service, mouse D, start. In my case, I'm already running it. That's all well and good. Let's go back here and start X again. So start X again, run it. This time your mouse ought to be able to move between windows. All right, 3X terms. Just to give you a brief overview of how to use TWM, the little square here with the circle inside of it is the iconify button. And if I click it, I'm going to click it on this window here, the one on the right. It will change from a full-fledged X term to a little icon. Not so little, but it's an icon nonetheless. It's got Beastie running in the background. And if I want to open it again, I can just click it and it'll open again, or I can close it. But there it is. That's the iconify function. The other button here, which I'm going to click the title bar and move this guy into the view so we can see him right in the middle. This one is the Resize button, and you can see because it has this little expanding window picture on it. But if you click it, it's a little counterintuitive on how it looks like it's the move cursor, but if you move it, it moves in very strange ways. The way that Resize works is you drag the cursor to whatever side you want to resize. So if I want to resize the top, I drag it to the top and it expands it to the top. If I let go and I click it again and I drag to the bottom, it'll expand the bottom, and left and right and so on. But if you want to make it smaller overall, you drag it to a corner and then you can drag it to make it small, make it big, whatever you want to do. That's resizing. If you double click a title bar, it doesn't really do anything. If you middle click, if you have 3-button mouse, which I highly recommend, if you middle click a window, it raises it, which means whatever, if it was behind before, it becomes the foreground. And if it's in the foreground, it becomes the background. So it's called raising and lowering the window. All right, all that's kind of a little bit tricky to remember. So there's an easier way. If you go to this black space here, the background, the desktop, if you will, and you left click, it gives you a menu. And you can choose iconify, and then you choose a target to either iconify or deconify. If I clicked on this guy, for example, it de-iconifies it, same as hitting the button. All right. If I choose resize, it's the same as if I click this button over here. If I choose move and I pick a window, then I can move it, which is the same as hitting the title bar. Raising and lowering, I already explained. Focus and unfocus. If you focus a window, it's hard to get the focus in the other windows, so generally don't bother, but you could do it. There's an icon manager. If you show it, it basically shows every running window, and you can scroll between them and pick one and all that kind of stuff. You can start a next term from here, not if you customize, but if you go with the default configuration in FreeBSD. It'll let you start a window. When you start a window, it shows this outline. You move it where you want it to, and then you click, and it drops it in, and it's good to go. When you want to kill a window, you can either kill it, which is kind of an immediate thing, or delete, which is either one's going to give you the skull and crossbones. But if you drag it over the window you want to get rid of, and you click it, it nicely tells it, please go away. Okay, so I'm going to delete a couple windows. And you can delete stuff that is iconified as well. All right, so there's that. This window over here is called the main window in TWM. When you exit this window, it's gone for, the whole X Windows system is going to shut down. So I'm going to start another window real quick. And this is like when we started, there were 3 of these. But if I stop one of these windows, either through typing exit or Control D, just the window goes away. But if I exit out of this window, it's all going to go away. So I'm going to leave this window running most of the time that I'm in TWM. But to show you a couple of applications that you can run in this, there's a cute little application called Xorg. We'll run that. Sudo package install Xorg. This will only take a very, very short amount of time. So it goes and gets it. It says you want it. Yeah, you can download it, and it's done. So I'm going to clear the screen by typing clear. I'm going to run Xeyes in the foreground to show a couple other things. There's Xeyes. It's ready to position. I put it over here somewhere. And there it is. And it's a couple of really cool cartoon eyes that'll follow my mouse around. And it gives me a sense of that X is working, number one. If I do this over SSH, it kind of is cool. But it also tells me how responsive things are. Because if I move it pretty quick, his eyes move pretty quick. So there it is. It's running in the foreground. And I started on this X terminal. Okay, it's a process running out of this parent process. And it's running, which is good. And I kill it by going here and saying kill or delete, and then pointing to it and all that kind of stuff. I can minimize it to an icon. I can make it bigger. All kinds of cool stuff I can do while it's in the foreground. I can also put it in the background by typing Control-Z. All right, I'm sorry, Control-Z suspends it, and it's not responding here. But if I want to put it in the background, I can type BG. And now it's running, and it's running in the background. So I changed it from running to suspended to running in the background. And I can do all kinds of interesting things with it. But if I want to put it back in the foreground, I don't know, can I suspend it? Probably not. No, I didn't think so. I'd have to do some trickier stuff. So first off, let's learn a little bit about PS. So if I want to look at what process is running, I type PS. There they are. There's all kinds of stuff running, but the one I'm wanting is this Xeyes 6849. I can kill it, which is a good idea. Let's do that. 6849. All right. And I can start it back up. And this time I'm going to start in the background by putting the ampersand there. So Xeyes in the background, it's running. The terminal returns immediately. It's still the parent process for this guy, but it's, I think, we could tell, except I'm in this, anyway, moving on. It's running in the background. I can see it in the list of processes running, and I can kill it the same, many other ways of killing it. Like that. All right, and then Firefox. We installed Firefox already, so let's run it, and we'll run it in the background. It's telling us that Xeyes is ended, which is fine. We don't care, really. I'm going to make it a little bigger, which I dragged it out and dragged it back to get it to do the resize thing. Wish somebody had told me that. First time I came into this, I was unable to do much of anything. But there, it's running a couple of tabs. And it's Firefox, and I can browse the Yahoo or Google or whatever I want to do. And it works just like any other browser you've ever used, any other Firefox browser anyway. So there it's running. It's running in the background, but the error messages that it displays are going against standard output, which in this console is the console window. But if I hit enter a couple times, you can see that there's console run. So I'm going to clear the screen over here so we can see what's going on. Okay. So Firefox is running. I can kill it the same way as always. I can iconify it too. It's a giant icon. But anyway, there it is. And I can resize it and all that kind of stuff. And we can kill it when we're done with it. I'll use kill this time. What the heck? Boom, it's done. All right, immediately exit, gives me some error messages, but eventually the process is finished. We're done with TWM, so I'm going to exit. You can Control-D or exit out of this window, and they'll all go away. There they are. They're gone. That's a functional system. I use TWM all the time, and it's fairly easy to install and run. You took basically two different commands, installed Xorg and the guest editions for VirtualBox, and then it was up and running. So yay. Next, we're going to install. We're going to configure. We installed the guest editions yet? No, not yet. So we're going to install the guest editions now to make things easier to do in the window. We'll do it in our root SSH session here. Normally we'd have to install, if we were running the other VMS driver, we'd have to install this video thing. So I'm going to comment this out because we're not going to actually do that. And I'll post this script up on a gist or something and then make it available. But all we really need is the guest editions. All right, so we're going to package install VirtualBox OSE guest editions. And if we package search, we can find out what it's called. Package search, VirtualBox, and it'll find anything VirtualBox. There we go. Find all the VirtualBox related packages, and the one we want is that one. We don't need the numbers or the dash stuff afterwards because there's only one. If there were more than one, which I've never seen, then we'd probably have to specify. But all we want to do is package install it. So package install, and then VirtualBox editions. There we go, and away it goes. It'll say I'm going to install it, 600K to download. It's going to almost be instant. And then I'm going to enable some things. Yep, let's do these 3 commands here. I'm going to enable the dbus. I'm going to enable VirtualBox guests and the service as well. So rather than type them in one at a time, I'm just going to copy them, paste them in here. It changed this one from nothing to yes, this one from nothing to yes, this one from nothing to yes. And now I'm going to create a machine ID using this dbus UUIG dgen thing. Which every time you run it creates a new unique ID, which is kind of cool. And then we'll redirect that output to /etc/machine-id. All right, and then we'll look at it, just make sure we got the right thing. There it is, and it's unique and it's good. So we can start the dbus and see if there's any errors. I'm doing all this as root because we still have this root shell running. Service dbus. Start. Starting, no problem. Good, we'll reboot. Exits the SSH session and restarts the console. Okay, good. There we go. Start it up. Log in. Now we're going to restart. We're going to start X one more time, and it's going to start it up. The scaling is a little bit better, but whatever. What happens now when I click into here is I have the mouse. It works. It seems normal. But when I get to the edges here, it's just going to let me keep going. And I can use my operating system here. And I can switch back and forth without having to use the host key anymore. It's like the #1 benefit. All right, I hover over this guy and type Control-D, and it exits TWM because we're going to install Lumina now. I'm going to go ahead and use the SSH session because it's just easier. Sudo-s to become root, and then package install Lumina. It's going to take a moment. It's going to download 66 megs, which isn't much, so it's not going to take too long. While that's doing that, I'll talk a little bit about some of these other handbooks. So the FAQ is important. The handbook is critical. The Porter's Handbook is going to be useful for those of us that are doing systems development, that sort of thing in there, systems programming. And the Porter's Handbook is about porting the operating system. The Developer's Handbook is the one that's going to be useful to us. The man pages is an online copy of the man pages, very handy. Presentations and papers are background information on specific subsystems and that kind of thing. The documentation project is all about this maintenance of this set of documents, which is critical. And if you can help there, yay, do that. That helps everybody. And then all the books and articles are all the books and articles on FreeBSD. There's not a lot of books that are current. A few. Michael Lucas has one, or several, but he has one specifically called Absolute FreeBSD, which is a fantastic book. It's current and it's very informative. Go buy it. Let's see if it's done. No, almost fetched. Okay. Look at their journal just to kind of get a sense of what that looks like. Well, apparently they need to fix the link. All right, let's try this link. Yep. Nope. Wow. Well, apparently the journal has lost in space, so I have to let somebody know. What else can I tell you before we run out of time? Well, look at the man pages real quick. So one of the commands that I've been using a lot of is PS. Let's look at PS. So that gives you process status. It gives you the name, a little tiny description, what part of the manual it's in. This is in section 1, which is general commands. It gives you all the different options. If it's in these square brackets, it's optional. So there's a whole bunch of optional. Actually, all of the arguments are optional. And then a description of the utility, what all the various things mean. The typical command is going to be -A for everybody's processes, E to display your environment, U for user information, all kinds of cool little flags that you can do. Some examples maybe. Sorry, not examples, but some of the flags. States, keywords that are important, and then there's an example. And then there's a bunch of see alsos, different sections of the manuals. So the manual is a really good place to go when you're wanting to know how something works, how to use it. I think we're probably done. Yep. All right, Lumina is installed. We'll leave this running. Go back to the video console. Here we are. And we can start, well, we could start X and we wind up in TWM. So we're not quite ready there. We're going to edit the, first off, we're going to make sure we're in the right directory. And then we're going to edit .xinitrc in our home folder, which we can do this way, vi.xinitrc, or if we were in some other folder, we could use a squiggly line. That's the same as typing user/home .xinitrc. And inside there, we're going to type exec. And I do remember, but I'm going to show you how you can not have to worry about it. And then we run this command here, which it says put the line exec start Lumina desktop at end of your xinitrc. So we're going to do it. Exec start Lumina desktop. And if you type this wrong, X Windows just won't start. It won't crash. It won't kill the world, but it'll be inconvenient. Once you've saved your xinitrc file, you can start X. And this time we'll get a slightly fancier desktop. All right, it fires up. It's already started. It's fetching this page in the background, I guess, and sooner or later it'll pop up with some information. I'm going to make this small. There we go. All right, in theory, or maybe this site doesn't have any news. We don't know or care really. This is good. First time, what I usually do is right-click on it and remove it. Don't really need it. But here's my Lumina desktop, and it's pretty. And it's got a little clock widget and a battery widget, which is, it's lying, but it's, because this is a virtual instance, but whatever. And then it's got this little flame down here. If we click the little flame, it's got, you can search for stuff just like any other start menu. It's got Firefox, which is the only thing I've installed. And then it's got some like browser, a file browser, an application browser, lets you set preferences and leave the system. We're really not going to use this menu much, but it's there. The easiest way to get stuff is to right click anywhere in the background, and it'll show you things you can do with the workspace you currently have on. It supports multiple workspaces. Think of those as multiple screens. The first thing we do is start a terminal, so let's do it. There it is. The terminal it has by default is Xterm. There's others you can download. And then these buttons look a little more familiar to people. You got the minimize button, the maximize button, the close button, and then I don't know what that one does, but who knows. But it's there, and you can learn about it, read up on it, whatever you want to do. But I'm going to exit it, click the X, And then I'm going to be able to do things like browse files, which is a little file browser. Looks achingly familiar if you've ever opened one. And then you can go to applications, and it has a bunch installed. We'll kind of browse through it. So in development, we have the text editor. In graphics, we have image viewers, PDFs, and stuff like that. Screenshot utility. Multimedia has a media player. Network has our Firefox browser. Office has calculator. You can install LibreOffice or whatever you want. This isn't about desktop. This is about programming, so I'm not going to touch on it. And then settings are the various settings that you can set related to the Windows system. And then in system, you can get information, browse to these things. You can look at external, that kind of thing. In utilities, there's various utilities available as well. All right, so that's applications. In preferences, we can set preferences for the desktop. So I'm going to change the display setting here just to show what can be done. Because we chose the VBox SVGA display driver, we can change it dynamically. So I'm going to change it to 724 by 768. It's currently 800 by 600. It's going to get a little big for this low resolution that I'm recording at, but it'll be okay. Click apply. It does its thing. A little menu thing. Oh, menu thing jumped up here. That's interesting. But regardless, it's clearly a bigger screen, and we're good to go. So that's kind of it for that. We can leave kind of in a nice way. Right-click, click leave. You can click on the little flame and click leave. You can restart your machine if you have operator privileges. You can do power off and that kind of thing. Or you can just log out, which is what we're going to do. We're going to log out of the Windows system. It's going to bail and resize back to the console. And that's kind of it. So what we'll do is we still got the sudo shell running over here. Is I'm going to shut down. I'm going to power it off. And then I'm going to give people 15 seconds. You could do longer to kind of shut the process down. So it says the system's going down in less than 30 seconds. Beware. And then in 15 seconds, it will start. All messages went across all of the open sessions. So anytime you see that is a good indicator you ought to shut your system down. All right. I mean, you ought to shut your files down, your programs down, that kind of thing. So there it is. We've done what we set out to do. We've run Lumina, we've run Firefox, we've run TWM, and configured it. So it seemed to work. So I'm going to go back into my VM, click on Snapshots again, and I'm going to take a new snapshot. And we're going to call this Post Lumina. All right, so the next time come along for the next video or whatever, I can start with Post Lumina state, or if I want to go back to the other one, I can do that. You can't go back to pre-Xorg and then come back to Post Lumina, though. This snapshot will be lost, I'm pretty sure. But you could take a snapshot of the current state. Yeah, maybe not. Anyhow, play around with that till your heart's content. That's all I got. I appreciate you listening. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and I'll post the script. Thanks.